everything that I thought would be hard was easy.
From mainstream media to consumer-led advertising,
there are other options.
What's at the front line of global media?
This has been reported worldwide
with a major media angle to it.
Comparing news and challenging views. The Listening Post, at this time on Al Jazeera.
The man who's never shown his face to the world is going to give Al Jazeera his first ever media interview. It's not the lack of African men and women willing to work for peace in their continent that was behind the setbacks of their mission. Just 2 days ago, the Interior Minister said these suicide bombers are on the run and have no control over where and when to attack. A powerful tribe that can still fight and show its might has decided to opt for peace. Mohammed Fad, Al Jazeera.
A popular uprising that shook the country to its core. A defiant president under siege from his people. As the protesters took charge of the streets, we look back at the events that are changing Egypt.
I will stay on the air if I can until the police come.
In a special program, Al Jazeera gives you a day-by-day account from those that witnessed them firsthand. Egypt burning, at this time on Al Jazeera.
This is Al Jazeera.
Hello and welcome to the News Hour live from Doha. I'm Rida Fakhri from Al Jazeera's news centres in Doha and London. These are the main stories. Standing their ground, thousands in Liberation Square reject the army's call for them to leave. They say they won't go until Mubarak does. The top brass of Egypt's ruling party stepped down, among them Mubarak's son Gamal. And gas prices expected to skyrocket in Jordan after a pipeline explosion in Egypt.
Because the region is being battered by a perfect storm of powerful trends.
Hillary Clinton warning of trouble ahead if reforms aren't implemented in other Middle Eastern countries. The top leadership of Egypt's ruling National Democratic Party has resigned. That's according to Egypt's state television. Among those to step aside is Mubarak's son Gamal. A spokesperson from Barack Obama's administration, meanwhile, has just commented, saying Gamal's resignation was what they described a positive step. All this as a commander-in-chief of Cairo's military pushed through the masses of pro-democracy protesters to plead with them to leave. That triggered a frenzied outcry among the crowds gathered in Tahrir Square, and the thousands there are still refusing to give up. They're chanting they won't leave unless President Mubarak leaves first. Alan Fisher has more.
The TV announcement of big changes in the ruling party.
Members of the Democratic National Party have resigned today. Dr. Hossam Badrawi has taken over as the Secretary General and Head of Policy.
Out the Executive Committee, including the President's son. For the people in the square, it's a step, but they want Mubarak out as the country's leader. Earlier, the protesters were asked to abandon their protest to clear the square to go home. The appeal came from the army's top general in Cairo, who met anti-Mubarak campaigners face to face. He asked them to think of Egypt and go, so business and life could get back to normal. In a message to the president, the crowd chanted, "We're not leaving, he is leaving." The government has tried to get things back on track throughout Saturday. It started with the president meeting senior members of his cabinet and talking about the economy. And then the Prime Minister told State TV that slowly it was business as usual.
I mean, for every day that goes, stability returns and we are more hopeful. We no longer see the events happening like last Friday, and security forces are gradually returning. Today you don't hear about more clashes, which shows that generally things are getting better. The opposition itself is very divided. But this doesn't mean that we won't talk to all parties. In the end, the main thrust of their demands is the same.
But from the US Secretary of State, a warning. Egypt and the Middle East is facing a perfect storm of circumstances. And so, changes have to follow.
The status quo is simply not sustainable. So for all our friends, for all the friends in the region, including governments and people, the challenge is to help our partners take systematic steps to usher in a better future.
Night has come to Liberation Square, and with it inevitably a rise in tension, a worry of what the darkness may hide and may bring. It's clear the government wants the protesters to move. What is equally clear, they have no intention of going anywhere. Alan Fisher, Al Jazeera.
Jackie Rowland is in Cairo. She joins us now via broadband. And Jackie, the president, Hosni Mubarak, and his top aides clearly ready to sacrifice several top symbols of the government and its national ruling Democratic Party in an attempt to satisfy the crowds and cling on to power, it appears. But will this help them create, do you think, the kind of cleavages that they're banking on?
The crowd in Tahrir Square is not interested in these few sacrificial lambs that are being thrown to the fire. They are interested only in the departure of President Hosni Mubarak himself. This whole campaign has been very personalized, very much directed against Hosni Mubarak. If you look at the posters, it's Hosni Mubarak's face that appears on the photos. It's the name of Mubarak that appears on the banners. This is what people want. And in fact, if these latest attempts are the idea that it may somehow assuage the crowd, concessions, what we've seen so far is that concessions are merely seen by the crowd as signs of weakness on the part of the authorities, and really encourage them to continue. The real question now is just the crowd itself, its ability to stay in the square at a time when the army is making it increasingly clear that it wants to clear the streets and open the roads again. It's already quite difficult for people to get into the square, and the army, while saying that it will not use force against the protesters, nevertheless it is making life more difficult for the people. So it really is at the moment a standoff between the people in Tahrir who've made it clear that they have one simple demand and they won't budge until that one demand is met, and the government, which is manoeuvring, trying to offer up concessions and at the same time maintaining a veneer of normality by carrying on with cabinet meetings and trying to carry on, at least in appearance, with the normal business of state.
Does it appear then that the government's manoeuvring could still pay off? How energized do you think the demonstrators remain? I presume that some of them must be feeling it is now time to accept some of these conditions and concessions and simply go home.
Well, what in particular we've seen in recent days is a split, if you like, between the real hardcore in Tahrir Square and some of the other people, the other residents of Cairo, the rest of the population who supported the demonstrations and took part in some of the individual demonstrations, like the first demonstration on Tuesday, then the Day of Rage on Friday, and then the other demonstrations that we've seen. But they're not the people who stay day and night in the square. What we did see in particular, a major shifting point, was the speech of Hosni Mubarak last Tuesday. In it, with clever use of rhetoric and portraying him as a man who served his country and wishing to retain some shreds of dignity, that actually did drive a wedge between the protesters and some ordinary people in Cairo who were saying enough's enough, the man has said he's going to step down, let him go with dignity. And so there are, if you like, degrees of how hardline people are in maintaining. Obviously, there's the people who sleep in the square, there's the people who come to the square during the daytime, there's people who come on individual demonstrations, and there's people who are not involved at all. And so there are these different layers, and the thing isn't going to end unless the people, the hardcore of the square, leave, and that hardcore don't look in any mood for compromise.
As you suggest, Cairo is a very populous city. Cairo proper is said to have some 8 million people, 18 million if you look at Greater Cairo. So presumably a lot of people are not involved in these demonstrations, but they do amount to say 10, 20% of the population of Cairo. If Suleiman were to take over from President Mubarak, and we understand this is one of the options that are being looked at in the dialogue that is going on between the government and some opposition figures, would the majority of the people in Tahrir Square, would they accept such an arrangement?
Absolutely not, no. I mean, Omar Suleiman is seen very much as a product of the Mubarak years, very close to Mubarak. I mean, he would be seen maybe as Mubarak light. Furthermore, he has made some